When that word was first invented, it did not have a plural form. The idea that it was meant to convey and represent and reflect accurately was that there's only one thing that is most important.
Welcome to Breakthrough Mode, the podcast where we intentionally get into the driver's seat of our lives, shift out of monotony and mediocrity, and step on the gas towards becoming the person we were always meant to become.
Hello, and welcome to Wednesday in the Wild on the Breakthrough Mode podcast. I'm your host, Megan Bauer. Thank you so much for joining me today and pushing play on today's episode. Just as a little reminder, our Wednesday in the Wild episodes are more about personal development in the moment, boots on the ground. We're out of the studio, we're out of theory. We are working on it in practice. And so I reflect that visually for those of us who are on YouTube by not being in the studio. So that is why we are in my car for the Wednesday in the Wild episodes, or at least most of them. So here is what I have been thinking about lately. As a fun fact, when the word priority was first invented or established, or whatever you do to come up with words, when that word was first, we're going to go with invented. When that word was first invented, it did not have a plural form. The idea that it was meant to convey and represent and reflect accurately was that there's only one thing that is most important. Therefore, there could only be a singular version of the word, a singular form of the word, priority. There's one priority. There's one thing that is most important. And then in the 1900s, industrialization era, I don't know if the Americans, I think the Americans pluralized it. Look at us. We pluralized it to represent multiple priorities, which means we watered down this word, which was supposed to convey the idea of one singular thing that is most important. We watered it down and introduced the idea of competing priorities, a group of things that are most important. And then, of course, the funny thing here is like when everything's important, that makes it so that nothing's important, because everything can't be the most important thing. Like that, it just doesn't work. They compete, and it's hard to keep your focus on the most important thing when you have set priorities in a plural form. Now, I will give allowance on this in that I think that you can have multiple priorities in different categories of life. Like I can have a health priority, and I can have a relationships priority, and I can have a work priority, and I can have a family priority. And when I'm talking about all of those most important facets in each category, I would call them priorities. However, to have multiple things in a single category that is the most important is doesn't work. It doesn't work. I always laugh when Jake comes home and he's like, "Yeah, they've set a new priority at work." And I'm like, "Oh, because everything's important, so nothing is important." And the problem that you run into there, especially when you're working with other people and you've established multiple priorities, is that someone might feel like one priority is actually more important than the others, but because they're all grouped as priorities, that idea of the most important thing doesn't actually get conveyed because it's priorities and we lose it. We don't understand what the most important thing is when we've called them all the most important thing. Okay, so boots on the ground, right? This is an opportunity for you to think about this. And this is what I have been thinking about as I've been reflecting on this word is what is my priority? So when I come to decisions, forks in the road, when I'm tired, when I'm worn out, what am I going to look to as the most important thing? And this is an opportunity to prioritize even your categories, right? So there are things that, like work might be the highest priority for you. And then in work, there is that one thing that is the most important, or maybe it's family or relationships, or maybe it's your health, or maybe it's whatever. But being clear with yourself on what the most important thing is is powerful because it helps you clearly make decisions. It helps you clearly choose what will be in service to that priority. When you have multiple priorities, confusion or deliberation or waffling, it just opens the door for all of that because you're not really sure what the most important thing is. As an example, if health was your top priority, eating well was your top priority, and you were going to go out to eat, you don't have to sit and choose between this fast food restaurant or that fast food restaurant because you know that neither one of them is going to serve your priority. Does that make sense? I know there's always things that pull at us. There's always things that are important. There's always things that we have to do, that we have to see to, that feel like the most important. So this is an opportunity for you to really get clear on what is actually the most important to you and make your decisions in service of that. Thank you so much for joining me today. I totally love you. Bye for now.